Welcome to the I Love Coaching podcast, the show where we help coaches, entrepreneurs, and leaders build businesses that create massive impact. I'm Adam Roach, alongside my incredible co-host,
Jess Weber, and we're here today to bring you the best strategies, mindset shifts, and real-life success stories to help you level up in your coaching journey.
Whether you're launching your coaching business, scaling to 6 or 7 figures, or just looking for inspiration to push through, this podcast is your go-to resource.
We're bringing you expert insights, real talk, and actionable items every single episode. So if you're ready to take your coaching game to the next level,
then let's dive on in. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the I Love Coaching podcast. I said it twice. I'm Adam Roach, and this is
Jess Weber. And I was waiting for that. I was literally like sitting on the edge of my seat going, is it going to happen?
Twice I said it, and I introduced ourselves. So, Jess, I'm super excited for this episode. Though, before we go into it, what's new in your world? You had a great Memorial Day, I know.
Yeah, it was a very low-key Memorial Day. The family, all the boys went over across the river is what we call it, from Missouri to Illinois to the raceway, and saw some fun cars and everything. And nice. I stayed home and nursed a hyperextended knee because my child thought that my leg was a pommel horse. I think he's going for Olympic gold, and he did very well, except for the fact that my legs don't lock. So,
that could hurt. Yes.
It's all good though. I used the time to read a couple books, although Adam told me I'm not supposed to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion. Yeah, she jumps on here and she says, yeah, I just finished 2 books. And I said, please tell me that took you like a month. She's like, no, it took me like a day. I was like, okay, great. Yeah, so for our listeners that this may be their first podcast, Jess is an extremely fast reader. And so if you ever want her to read a book for you, just DM her and say, will you read this book for me? I mean, she's probably faster than ChatGPT. But that's not the topic. That's not the topic today. The topic is going to be about, I got to spend some time today with Rory Vaden on a high capacity leadership call via John Maxwell. And Jess, this was a very powerful and yet simple call of his message. The message was super simple and the call was very powerful. And if you're not familiar with Rory Vaden, go look him up. He's written how many books?
Well, he's written 2 and the third is on its way out. Mm-hmm. So he's written Take the Stairs and Procrastinate on Purpose, which are really about productivity and using your time wisely and being intentional with what you're doing. And his new one is coming out as Wealthy and Well Known, which is all about personal brand and how making that your one thing and being focused on that helps you become even more successful, more productive.
That's right. And if you stay till the end, I'm going to give you a link that I probably shouldn't be sharing. I'm going to give you that link and you can go get his new book in an audio form right now. So stay till the end. So Jess, let's dive into this because Rory, I want to cover 3 areas that he shared with us. And that is, number 1, what is a personal brand? Number 2, why do they fail? And number 3, what is specific about building your own uniqueness? And I love the way that Rory put it. He says, what's God's calling in your life? I love that last part there. But let's dive into what a personal brand really is. And some of his stats that he gave really were just eye-opening. He said 74% of Americans, so they're all specific to Americans here, will trust you if you have a personal brand. Nearly 3/4 of our population will trust someone if they have a personal brand. That's a huge number.
It is a huge number. But the whole point of it is a personal brand means that it is all about you. So it's not just a company logo or company colors or a company title, but it's rounding you out as a whole person, as a digital footprint. And that makes you, what our acronym is more relevant, more real, more authentic. And so I think it's a really interesting concept to talk about in terms of entrepreneurship, of having a personal brand and why that is more important to lean into than a company brand.
Yes, for sure. Because this is what Rory said. The definition of a personal brand is very basic. It's very simple. It is a digitization of your reputation. Let me say it again. It's a digitization of your reputation. And I love what he said about the word reputation, because reputation is an old word, right? It is something that reputation, I remember in probably elementary, oh my gosh, she's got a bad reputation. or a good reputation, right? My mother would always say, how's the reputation? Oh, it's a good reputation, Mom. Okay, you can walk to school with them, right? So what now our world, we are building personal brands, and it's just your digitization of your reputation.
I really want our podcast producer to just do a
Yes.
clip of you trying to say digitization over and over and over
Say
again.
that 3 times. Yeah.
I know, right? But no, I think it's huge because we live in a digital world, right? And so prior to being in a digital world, you had people who had reputation literally built via word of mouth.
Right.
And then if you got super lucky, it was in the media in some capacity. You were featured in a news story, in a newspaper, in a magazine, or on some show. I'm thinking throwback like 60 Minutes or something like that. But it was media produced around your public reputation. And now, because everything is digital, everybody has a reputation, and you want to not be obscure. You want to be seen. You want to be known, which is why his whole, new book is Wealthy and Well Known, is you want people to feel like they can connect to you and trust you. And we know from John Maxwell, leadership is influence. And so you want to have a positive influence on people and help them develop trust, recognize you as an authority, see you as a real human and not just some AI generated thing or just a company man, right? And so I love this conversation.
And it'll continue. So these, I keep looking over here in my notes. He says digital, right? Multiply your reputation, right? That's the neat part of the digital world that we live in, is you can multiply your reputation. Now you can have it on so many different platforms, and you can have it in a authentic trust building space through going live or getting up on a stage somewhere or being a guest or a host on a podcast. And that's what he said. He says your job when it comes to really building that reputation is to multiply your trust. And we've actually talked about how I think there's 6 or 7 different ways to build your trust, from slowest to fastest, with the slowest way of building trust in the digital world through ads. That's the slowest. Through the fastest way is going live on your social media, right? Because that's unedited and people see you as who you are for that moment in time. And then I love what he says here. When you start to multiply your trust, the next step is to automate trust at scale. That's what that's where you can really start to build that wealth, if you will, of building your reputation, is automated to scale. Then they can see you, then they can know you, and then it improves other people's lives. Your reputation starts to improve other people's lives, and that's when more people start to come back to you.
Well, so you heard Rory Vaden through John Maxwell. I've heard Rory Vaden now for about 2 years through Keller Williams. He's been able to speak at the CEO Summit and at some of their large events. He did a great job of being authentic and real from stage. And each time I saw him, his message was the same. So there was a level of repetition, not that it was boring, but it was reiterated in a way that made me grow in my trust of him. And that's where I was headed with that. Was the other piece of that he presented at those events was his content diamond. And so he's known for this concept of creating a message that is the same. So it builds that authenticity, it builds that trust, and you put it out across multiple platforms. So he says, lean into one, but then you can adapt it to every other one. So for us, for example, doing a video-based podcast allows us to have video content in both long form for YouTube, short for YouTube Shorts, for Instagram Reels, for Facebook Reels, that kind of thing. But then we also can take the transcript and turn it into written content or blog posts. We can take the audio form and put that out for podcasting, and we can create images from our video that are stills, right? And so we kind of collect almost a data bank of content from one video and use it across multiple platforms. So we're exponentially amplifying our trust through one authentic video. And I think that's a really key piece of what he's saying as well, is it's not that you have to go immediately out and hire a 10-person content team, but it's understanding who you are authentically and being able to articulate that and share that with people. And then your automation part is taking that and putting it in more places. So
Yeah.
that's where I was headed with that, was that content diamond piece is, I think, another level of, one, knowing who you are, but then two, amplifying trust.
Well, and that goes to the point of multiplying your reputation 24/7. Right? That really helps in that cycle of you never looking like you're sleeping, because you're always doing something in a value add space. And Rory went a little bit deeper, saying that when you're multiplying your reputation, when you're multiplying your trust, and now you're in an automated space of trust building at scale, the goal is to impact humanity. That's it. The goal is to help humanity in the space of moving them forward one way, shape, or form. Here it comes, in your uniqueness, right? Of whatever your uniqueness is, whatever specifically you are good at, whatever your God-given talent is. And this is going back to John Maxwell in Puerto Rico. He told this story. He was like, gosh, somebody came up to me and they said, Mr. Maxwell, Dr. Maxwell, you've written so many good books. You're amazing. And if you go back and listen to a few of our podcasts, I may have shared this story. He says, you're amazing. Your leadership, you're amazing. And he's like, we're only one step away from stupid, right? We're not amazing, right? God has given us this skill set of our uniqueness. And if we can find what that uniqueness is and go deep with it, we may look amazing. Our gifts are amazing in what God gave us. And I thought that was so powerful. And then what Rory continues to say there is, that is your job, is to reach more people. That is your job, is to serve more people in that uniqueness space.
Well, to me, helping more people and impacting humanity, as you put it, is just providing value to other humans through what you know, what you've done, what you've experienced, and your passions. And I know we've talked about in the past a character diamond, which is a Ryan Dice concept of not only your North Star, the thing that motivates you, but also your quirks and your kryptonite and your passions make up your whole character, right? And so I think if you take that character diamond concept and then you amplify it with a content diamond, so character diamond plus content diamond, you really get to see how who you are as a unique character can be amplified across multiple platforms to serve more people. Because honestly, people don't care about who you are, what you've done. They care about how who you are and what you've done can help them. And so it's so important to show up authentically in these different platforms and places with a personal brand that is going to resonate with people. So being authentic and sharing your trials, sharing your problems. Like, I know I joked about, my son using my knee as a pommel horse, but I have hypermobility. Maybe my story and telling people about that becomes a relatable place that I can connect with somebody else and then serve them, whether it's connect them with a doctor that I work with, give them exercises that I did do, have a conversation about supplements. Who knows what the thing may be, but by authentically sharing that piece and then putting out my content on multiple platforms, it allows me to connect with others. And so that's why I love all the things that Rory is doing, because I think there's a lot of value in knowing exactly who you are and then being able to share that. And it's not, hey, there's a closet over there, let me go pull out every skeleton. But it is about sharing all the different facets that you feel comfortable enough sharing that make you authentically and uniquely you.
Well, and that's why in our blueprint, the very first exercise is your character shaping events. Right? We take you through that exercise intentionally because, again, that uniqueness, that space, that's yours. That is 100% yours. That's where you're going to find your gifts. That's where you're going to find your amazingness, is in the character shaping events. And then we help you then put those into themes. Now, let's transition here and talk about why people fail in the space of building a personal brand. I love this, right? We're not going to see it here on YouTube or in a podcast setting, though he showed a really cool visual. And I can't remember the name of the model he developed there. It was after one of his buddies or maybe one of his own mentors. I can't remember. Do you remember what the name was? It's okay.
Sheehan's wall.
There it is. Yep. A wall. Now, this was really fascinating. He says, because the biggest mistake is when people are unknown, right? So let's talk about this. People are unknown because of their obscurity, right? They're unknown. So there's two sides of this wall. You got a wall, you got one on the left-hand side, you got one on the right-hand side, and a wall in the middle. And on the right-hand side is well-known, right? That is notoriety. So, but let's go back. And you and I have had this conversation in podcasts. We've had these conversations in our leadership team meetings. The obscurity people, I'll go to the bottom here of what he says, is there are so many moving parts. Rory says they bounce off the wall and it simply becomes noise because they're doing so many things.
Yep.
They're doing so many things.
The visual that I have from that was like rubber bouncy balls, right? And you've got so many of them pinging off that nothing is sticking, nothing's landing, nothing's resonating. It's just chaos of, balls in a box, essentially, going around and around.
So I'll give everyone listening and watching here the visual. So think of a wall in front of you. And on one side of the wall is your brand. And your brand wants to break through that wall. But yet you have many topics. You have maybe a bunch of different avatars. You have different profiles out there. You have maybe a bunch of different business models. Maybe you've done a bunch of different jobs and maybe you've got a bunch of different ideas. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want you to think about if you just had a hammer, right? And that wall in front of you. And if you had one hammer and you kept hitting the exact same spot with that hammer on the wall, eventually you're going to break through that wall. And when you break through that wall with that one hammer, that is actually you getting through that obscurityness, because now that is landing. It's that one rubber ball that bounces and it's going to keep hitting that same spot on the wall over and over and over until it actually breaks through. And then you get to the well-known space of notoriety for that hammer or for that bouncy ball idea, whatever it is that went through the wall. And this is where Rory talks about the two questions to ask yourself. When you get on the other side, you find your uniqueness. And the uniqueness is answered in two ways. Number one, what problem do you solve? One word. You can only answer this in one word. And the second one is what audience do you serve? One word only one word. So that was a great visual that he shared from that model that really resonated with me because wow, that's really, really cool. If you just have one and you're able to break through and hit the exact same spot on that wall over and over and over, you'll break through that wall faster.
Well, it's funny, we do movie references on this podcast, and my head immediately went to Shawshank Redemption and his tiny little hammer for his chess pieces that he was doing and he used to get out of the wall. It's the same thing, though, of do you want to just dump a box of bouncy balls in a room and see what happens, or do you want to be intentional with your time and your energy and your effort to actually make a dent, right? And move forward and move through that wall. And so I've heard him use the visual of the one word thing. And so some of the examples he gave were Dave Ramsey and debt, right? Or Brene Brown and shame, or Mother Teresa and poverty. Those are the three that pop off the top of my head, but they were very big, heavy, kind of macro terms that each of those individuals built a reputation and a niche in. And so I think it's really an interesting thing to think about. No matter what industry you're coming from, you're not using the industry lingo for your one word, right? Dave Ramsey and debt is a macro word. He isn't talking specifically about finances or specifically about money management or specifically about stocks or whatever the thing may be, but he's doing a macro of debt. Same with Brene Brown. She's not even saying...
Stay there with Dave Ramsey for a second, because diluted focus gets diluted results.
Yeah.
If anybody thinks about debt solutions right now, Dave Ramsey comes to mind.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, instantly. He's been talking about debt on the radio for how many years? 30 plus years.
Right. And as a debt solution, he has one framework that everybody knows, the snowball method.
That's it. The debt snowball. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was going to say, and that's the same thing with Brene Brown and shame. She's not like, I'm a mindset coach or anything, but she has talked about this emotion and this feeling and this problem that people have. And that has
Robin's anxiety.
Yeah. And so I love this conversation because I think people get so caught up, and I've had clients do it. We've had coaches do it. I did it myself once. You get so hung up on a name, a tagline, a logo, a color scheme, a font, a website, a thing. That is not what a personal brand is. It's a concept. It's an idea. It's a feeling. It is not all of those things that you put in Canva.
Well, I love this definition here. He said personal brand. You start with who are you serving? Right? Personal brand. You have to start with a who. Right? We've heard from other people, you got to start with a why. But if you really think about a why, when you really go into that, our why is usually a who anyway. Right? It's true. And so when you think about your personal brand, you have to start with a who are you serving first, along with the uniqueness that you are going to solve their problem. And just this is your favorite line. Rory says you are most suited to lead, coach, help whom?
The person that you once were 2 to 5 years ago.
Right. You know how they think, you know how they act, you know who they are. And that's such the aha that people should have, is that you don't have to reinvent anything, because that individual who you are serving was you 3, 5, 10 years ago. And you know exactly who you were, how you acted, what was going on in your life back then. And boy, it sure makes bringing solutions to the table much easier and faster.
I love that you bring that up, because I think it's also a relevant conversation when you're struggling with personal brand and being like, how do I want to present myself in this marketplace? You're going to attract yourself. And so it's like, what's attractive to you? What's funny to you? What's fun to you? What's educational to you? Because, we've talked about, top of funnel is entertainment, right? So what do you find entertaining? That's more of the content you should be putting out, because then you're going to attract your past self, and that's going to be the person you're best positioned to serve. And so you don't have to overthink it. And so even Adam and I, when we strategize about I Love Coaching content, and he's like, I got to think, I was like, what do you find funny? What content is popping up when you are doom scrolling? Not that you do that often, but it's like, what happens in your world? That is what you need to be doing more of. The honest to goodness truth with personal brand is just doing the activities and putting yourself out there as an authentic human, not trying to position yourself as this perfect, beautiful, icon, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so, even if you take a page out of influencer books, most influencers are popular because they've done video blogging, right? Vlogs and that kind of thing. They've gone live. People like Jen Gottlieb wrote an entire book called Be Seen, and her entire business is built on her doing her makeup live on Instagram for however many years she's been doing it now. And that's what got her into public speaking and got her onto stages and all these other things that she was able to do, was because she showed up authentically live and built trust.
So here's 3 questions that he gave that I love, and they're so simple. What challenges have you conquered? Answer it. What challenges have you conquered? The second one, what setbacks have you survived? Write them down, whatever they are. And then what obstacles have you overcome? And to Jess's language, when it comes to now creating content, it's not about you. It's not about you anymore. It's about your past self that you are looking to help and serve. That's who you make the content for. The content isn't for you. It's for serving other people. And that other people is basically yourself 3, 5, 10 years ago, so you know who you were then. It makes things so much easier when you can do that, Jeff.
Well, the whole point of it is I feel like it helps you get out of your own way, because I think when people say personal brand, they immediately get overwhelmed if it's not something they're already practicing. And I say this as a person who self-identifies as somebody who is not a social media person by nature. I don't naturally snap a photo and think this is something I need to write about or share. I have thousands of photos of my child, and I maybe post one every couple weeks kind of thing. It's because it's just not natural to me. But I know that the more frequently and consistently I post, the more I am seen, I am known, and I remind people of who I am, what I can do, and how I can help them. And so when I sit there and I go, okay, I'm not actually posting anything to social media for me, because my Google Drive reminds me of, this was 6 months ago, this was a year ago, time hops, all that kind of stuff. I don't need social media to do that for me, but I do need social media to remind other people that I'm out there. And so by sharing these things authentically, whether it's making jokes about my child wrecking my knee, or talking about doing a podcast with Adam, or any other myriad of things that I'm doing in my life, myself 3 years ago would have never believed that this was possible for myself. I was in a completely different world, completely different state of being. And so if I sit there and I think about what would have given me hope, would have inspired me, would have encouraged me, would have helped me, would have been value to me 3 years ago, and I post from that lens, then it's like, oh, it's a no-brainer. This is so much easier that way. And it's not that you have to post 14 times a day. Start with once a week and then twice a week and slowly increase it as it becomes more natural.
That's right. Yep. Again, all you're doing is looking to build trust. I love this last thing that I'll mention, and then we'll land the plane here, is your brand. And this is not for vanity's sake, right? And what I mean by vanity's sake, this isn't for increasing the follower count, and that's all you focus on, or the number of comments, or the number of hearts that you get, or likes, or whatever it is. So he says, not for vanity, you're doing it to impact humanity. And I really like that because, number one, you have to believe in what it is you are actually doing. If we called up Dave Ramsey and say, do you believe you can really help people with their debt? He's going to say 100% yes. He's going to say he can do that. So his vanity is not, let me just go get as many followers as I can. He's actually doing it to help humanity. Now, whether you like Dave Ramsey or not, it doesn't matter. The proof is in the pudding that he solves a problem, and that is his uniqueness. And he's going as deep as he can with that. So I would challenge all of our listeners right now, if this resonated with you, go do the activities, right? Go figure out what your personal brand is. What is in one word, what problem do you solve? And what one word, who are you looking to serve? Whether that's in a coaching space, whether that's in a business entrepreneurial space, whether you're in a W-2 role, what are you doing in that space? Yep. That's how I would land this plane. Jess, any way you would like to land this plane?
No, I was just going to ask, when do I get my pilot's license? Because I feel like we've done a lot of flying.
We have done a lot of flying. And actually, I don't think this plane of I Love Coaching community is ever going to land. That's a good
No,
thing.
I was just sitting here. Sorry, that's my ADHD brain for you. Just going, oh yeah, he said land the plane yet again. Kind of like you open with your double, welcome backs. We always land planes at the end.
We do land planes. Yes, we do.
No, oh yeah.
Yep. So his book, Wealth and Well Known. If you go to this link, and don't share this with anybody, wink, wink, freebrandaudio.com. I'll say it again, FREBRAND audiobook.com, freebrandaudio.com/Maxwell. You will get his audio of that book that he did say is AI read, that they are working through that AI to sound like him, sound like his wife, and he will do his own reading of that, though this is way before this is supposed to be released in, I think he said sometime in July. So again, I'll say it again, freebrandaudio.com/Maxwell.
Yep. Or if you haven't already subscribed to our newsletter, you can do that. And when I send out the podcast episode via the newsletter, I'll make sure that link is there as well. So ilovecoachingco.com, and you can join the newsletter too.
Sounds good. Just great conversation today on personal brand. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time. See you. Bye.